Walt 101 WKQX. We are backstage at PIQNIQ 2014, joined by Keegan and Jeremy from Wild Cup. Guys,
thank you for having us.
You made it. You made it to PIQNIQ. We've been talking about this for so long. I'm so psyched that it's finally here. Last time we saw you guys was at the House of Blues playing the Queued Up Artist Showcase. You guys haven't stopped since.
No. I mean, we were just home for like 4 days, and it was like, so what are you going to do with your 4 days home?
Right.
You know, it's like felt really luxurious. It's been pretty much nonstop.
That show feels like 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, I feel like it's like looking at old high school photos or something. Think about that. Well, it's like I keep saying to people like, well, we're done December 18th. I mean, it's not that bad. People are like, realize it's not even September yet. And I'm like, well, you know, it's all relative.
That's funny. And when you played the House of Blues show, you were just telling me you actually hurt your finger on the second song. I didn't know that.
Well, I was feeling really good. Like, we started off, that's a great room. And
right.
Chicago, for us, thanks to you guys, is one of our really big markets where it's really fun. It's always a great crowd. And on the second song, I always hit the drums really hard. And I just came down to hit the drum and hit my entire finger on the edge of the metal drum. And it was the kind of thing where I was like, oh, gosh, that hurt. And then it was bleeding, and then it wouldn't stop bleeding, and then it wouldn't stop bleeding. And I had to, like, stop the show after 2 songs and just kind of, like, talk as they like did first aid on my finger.
I do remember that.
Blood all over your guitar.
Oh, that's right. Oh, wow.
Afterwards, it looked a lot cooler than it actually was in the moment.
You have a war wound now.
Yeah.
It was actually just a ketchup packet. We do that every show now.
Look forward today at PIQNIQ. So you were in Brooklyn, like at the height when Brooklyn was blowing up, hipster central, and you decided to move to Nashville? How? What? How?
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it was because I was spending all my time in New York figuring out how to pay to live in New York. You know, which was the big, oh, camera guy, cell phone. You're going into camera jail. Yeah, I was spending all my time figuring out how to do that, and a really small amount of my time figuring out how to actually do the one thing that I wanted to do, which was play music. So
right.
I knew that Nashville kind of had this thing bubbling at that time, and then it was really small bubbles, you know. This was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so we came down there, and quickly over 5 years, I mean, it's like, as much as I gripe about how the music business has changed, one of the nice things about it changing and there being no money in music anymore is a lot of that infrastructure in Nashville of like just going and writing songs for other people has gotten a lot smaller.
Right.
And out of getting a lot smaller, it's given birth to so many cool bands that probably wouldn't have been able to exist in the way that they do now. Like, you know, there's Caitlin Rose and Diarrhea Planet and a bunch of other cool people. And
well, I think it's interesting because, you know, like I said, you know, Brooklyn was really happening at that time that you left. But then now you look at the past couple of years, and I think Nashville has become, you know, lived up to its name, Music City.
I feel like someone who was saying this in an interview that I was reading the other day, and I think that it's true, which is, you know, and this is obviously a little bit reductionist, but it's nice to be from Nashville because there's not that same pressure. And for me, I really enjoy a massive amount of music, and our record has 15 songs on it, and we touch upon a lot of different types of music. And I feel like if you're in New York or LA, there's a certain pressure to be able. It's got to have a thing to it,
right.
You know. And for me, I just wanted to kind of like free us from that pressure and go like, well, let's just write songs how we know to write the songs.
Yeah, it's kind of like New York is all about hype. There's a lot of hype in bands.
See, people always try and do this. We talk about New York, and they're like, but New York's the worst, right? I mean, it's pretty bad up there. And I'm like, well, no, not really. And they're like, well,
no, but look, I lived there for 5 years, and I saw bands would always have to try to find what's their hook, what's their catch, you know, and where I think, you know, you guys can just come out and be honest, and sometimes I don't feel that when I hear bands out of Brooklyn.
Yeah. That's a big compliment. Thank you for that.
Well, I think that also in Nashville, people move to Nashville to be in music, and they take it really seriously.
And be steeped in a long legacy of great music and like songwriting. So I think that was something that people ask, like, we'll get like the stock question, like, well, you guys don't sound like you're from Nashville.
Right.
Which is like true, but I think we carry some of that, which is like the idea that this is a city known for songs.
It's good songwriting,
songs.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to have a pedal steel guitar in it or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just good songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now how did you guys hook up once you made it to Nashville?
I was kind of doing singer-songwriter stuff and really quickly realizing that the world did not, especially Nashville, didn't need any more white male guitar players at all,
right.
Especially as mediocre of a guitar player as I am. And so I just kind of met Jeremy, and Jeremy was playing in a couple other things, and we both were just really drawn to similar kind of music, like Arthur Russell and like all these kind of more early like 70s disco stuff, or like Fela Kuti, and then started getting into more like electronic music, and then we were like, man, this would be cool to be in a band that mixed some of this.
Right.
And I think we both shared that where really quickly we were like, well, I don't want to release a record anymore that has my face on it and says my name really big.
Right.
And instead, be able to do something a little bit
That's
more.
interesting because the record Youth, which you said has 15 songs on it, a lot of it there's a lot of propulsion on this record, a lot of drums, and I was going to ask where that influence came from, but I think you may have just answered that question.
Well, it's those things where you like name things that inspire you, and then you feel silly because you're like, we're not really even scratching at it. But
right,
it's
right.
stuff that I think that what you're saying is true, in that I was really excited versus me in an acoustic guitar someplace.
Right.
The idea to use rhythm is like a key piece of telling a
Huge.
story. Yeah, just going like, well, what happens if we build a song with bass and drums and like congas, and then go from there, rather than how I had to write songs for myself, which is like sitting at a piano like some sad guy just being like, ding.
Oh, isn't this
ooh, ah.
exciting?
Yeah, yeah. So
Now,
it was nice, you know.
You ended up recording a lot of this in your house?
Yeah, we kind of transformed my bedroom into
We say a
makeshift-
home studio,
Yeah,
but
we
it's
say home studio.
Right,
but,
right.
You know, my bed is still unmade in the corner, and he's
Yeah.
singing out of a closet. You know.
yeah.
But it's got a full Pro Tools rig and a Neve console. But
Oh, yeah.
Well, just
Well, that's
like
I like.
$20,000 mics and everything. But
Yeah, totally. Well, not to make it like sentimental, but that's what I think is cool now. When I like hear like that, like you guys are playing Thunderclutter and now playing Color, it's like these are songs I literally recorded the vocals to in his bedroom. And I remember like we finished this record and we were sitting outside on the front porch of this old dingy house in Nashville, and we were like, well, what would be like our hope for this record? And really at that point, no joke, I just said, well, it'd be awesome if someone heard it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is really cool because we're getting to like tick that off in a big way.
it's
thanks to a lot of
amazing
people.
how, it sounds trivial now or jovial, but it's really your hope is that as a musician, a songwriter, that somebody hears your music and then
Yeah.
connects with it.
Totally.
And obviously, Thunderclatter has been really big for you guys. So obviously, that has worked. Has that surprised you? What's that feeling like, knowing that people are requesting your song now on the radio?
I think it's cool to know that it exists out there because you realize that it'll continue to last for a while, whether you're, like now
Sure.
it's officially out of your hands. It's also cool because it's a song that really was kind of the first song we ever recorded as a band, so it's symbolic of that. And it's also a song I wrote for my wife the week that I met her, so it's symbolic of that,
Wow.
which is really cool. So I feel like we're lucky to have a song that's so steeped in a bunch of cool different elements. And but yeah, the short version is yes. I think that's one of the things you go back to. Like, you said we've been traveling nonstop for the last year and a half, and it's hard because the music business and the way that people listen to music now is so like disposable and toss away.
Yep.
And when it's not tossed away, it's very overly passionate in a very cynical, negative way. And so that's one of the main things when bouncing between those worlds and being tired and stuff is like slowing down and going like, this is really crazy. That somewhere in Chicago, like when we're sitting in Nashville, going like someone's calling a radio station, going, "I'm sitting in a car with this person, and I want to hear this song."
That's so true, and it's so cool that you are able to take that second, take that breath, and go appreciate it. Because a lot of bands, they don't. They keep chasing the next thing. What's bigger, bigger, bigger. And next thing you know, it's gone.
Yeah.
And they didn't get a chance to enjoy it the first time around. So it's kind of refreshing to hear that you are taking a moment.
That's the craziest thing, whether it's Jimmy Fallon or playing a festival or whatever. In the moment, there's maybe 5 things that I can remember of our entire career where I felt like we were present there and you could enjoy it as every second happened. A lot of it is 2 hours later, you're sitting in the van on the way back to the hotel or to the airport, and you're like, whoa. Or you'll see someone will post a photo on Instagram, and you're like, that's so many people.
Yeah.
And so that stuff is really cool because so much of this is a big mystery as to how much progress we'll be able to make in terms of reaching people with our music. But there's cool things like that where you see the photo and you're like, man, that like even if we shut it down tomorrow,
right?
This is pretty incredible.
That's awesome.
Or meeting somebody after a show. We talk to a lot of people after our show, and we'll talk to somebody that's connected with the song through radio or whatever else, and it's really refreshing to kind of like hone in and have a personal conversation with somebody.
And that goes so
them.
far too. I can tell you from experience that little connection you make with a listener or a fan, somebody who has listened to your music and wants to meet you, for you to take 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes to have a conversation with them, changes them and their perception of the band forever, and they'll go and tell their friends. I mean, that's
sometimes
viral
good.
on the base level.
Every once in a while, I'll talk to somebody and you could just see it in their eyes, and they're like, "You're not as attractive or interesting as I assumed you might be."
That's funny. So, Color is the next song. Now, you spell it with a U, the English version. Why?
Well, at the time, it was because I was really writing a lot of the lyrics based on this this poet Philip Larkin,
Okay.
who is a really big English poet, and also just happens to be like a really cranky librarian who's a fantastic poet. And so I just kind of was reading a lot of stuff, and I saw that sometimes if I get stuck on something, I'll pick up something that I'm really digging deep in and enjoying reading, and I'll just kind of scan for words to start sparking ideas for me. And for me, that was just a word that I saw a glimpse on the page in his collected poems, and I was like, boom, and it just started me writing.
Awesome. Well, that's a great song, and you have been kicking off the set with that. Is that still the case, or
It kind of changes. It
Oh,
depends. Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Keeping it fresh. Nice. All right. So in the AT&T Access Granted Lounge, I got to turn on this phone and get a question from @KevinKellum, who wants to know if you have any pre-show rituals.
See, people always ask this. I wish
We
that
should
we
start.
Yeah, we really should. Like, we see a lot that we're really like. We'll hear it from the next dressing room over and be like, you know, where like people are stomping around and you know it's like it's trying to arouse the gods or something like that. We don't have that yet.
Keegan has a vocal warm up that sounds more like
It'll
a
clear
cat
out a
fight
room
than it
in no
does
time.
a vocal warm up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think another one is tequila sodas. That's a
See,
big part
I think
of it.
that's what Kev is looking for.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, when you load in at 6 and you sound check and then you've got like 6 hours until you play.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, it's a lot. You have 2 beers and you're asleep in a corner somewhere.
That's awesome. So you've been on doing some dates with Bleachers. I know you've got a bunch coming up. You're coming
Yeah.
back here to Chicago, November 15th at the Vic with Bleachers. How's
Yeah.
that been going?
It's been amazing. I mean, just meeting them, they're super sweet,
Yeah,
really
Jack is
great
great.
guys.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not always the case. I feel like we sometimes we'll play multiple dates with people and never meet them. You know, and they're the group of guys, even the crew, where they just walk up and grab you and give you a hug and say hey, which is really nice. And it's nice for us too because we've been doing so much of our shows in these different types of venues. So it's kind of nice in some ways to actually go back and it's like we're in the first 3 months of this whole journey where you're playing in front of an audience that may not be there explicitly to see you and that you really get to like earn it again. And I feel like before we go back into the studio after we're done kind of taking color out to the world, that'll be a really great thing to have just been doing.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, bring that in. Well, can't wait to see the set later on today. It's Keegan, Jeremy from Wild Cub here in the AT&T Access Granted Lounge, backstage at PIQNIQ. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.